This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen 6, PDF Pen Pro 6, and PDF Pen for iPad and PDF Pen for iPhone. Find out more about all the flavors of PDF Pen at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this one's going to be just a little bit different because we're going to talk about something that we sort of already did, but maybe you haven't seen yet. My guest this time is Wally Cherwinski. He is, well, Wally, do you consider yourself a video professional, a video guru? Because I consider you both of those and a whole lot more.
I wish I were a video guru. I guess coming from you, that's an accolade I'd love to hear. But I'm an avid amateur, let's put it that way. And my business card says I'm a videographer and an Apple enthusiast.
Well, then you're right at home here, Wally. No question about it. The intro I gave, because we're going to talk a little bit video, but almost from a practical standpoint. Every year, Wally and I both go to Macworld, iWorld in San Francisco. For the last, countless years it seems, we've been attending the Cirque du Mac party. For the last few, I've been doing a bootleg video of the show. And when I say bootleg, I mean a real kind of bootleg. The only advantage I have is that the band knows it and they don't have a problem with it as far as me having a camera out in front. Wally does something, though, much different. Where mine's a bootleg video, Wally actually does a produced music video, or in this case, this year, a set of produced music videos from that same performance. Contrasting the two is very interesting, and I thought it'd be fun, whether you were there or not, to talk to Wally about how he does this, how he makes his look so good when mine looks like a bootleg video, and just what tips and tricks he uses to get it out to you so you can enjoy it whether you were there or not. Does that sound like a fair introduction, Wally?
That sounds fair, Chuck. And in fact, you should know that Chuck is actually part of my video. His bootleg video is the entire stream from Cirque du Mac, which is about an hour and a half performance. And that's a lot of staying power, Chuck, I must say. But Chuck is now one of my camera crew, so to speak, along with 4 others. And his stream is part of my edited video. So it's part of the family now.
And I'm honored to be there. What fascinates me is I look at my video and think, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I look at yours, it's like, oh, I got a lot to learn and a lot to do.
Well, Chuck, you said it seems like it's been ages, and actually in Macworld years, I'm a relative newbie. This was my 5th, but one of the first ones I did, I took my camcorder and decided just for fun that I was going to record during the performance a few sets or a few snips here and there of the Macworld All-Star Band. Now, if you know Cirque du Mac, it's one of the premier parties at Macworld. It is fantastic. It's a great setting. It's a club in San Francisco, standing room only, an enthusiastic bunch of Mac zealots in the audience, and fantastic music by the Macworld All-Star Band. And these guys are not only Mac geeks, but they're fantastic musicians. Paul Kent, the guy behind Macworld Expo, Chris Breen, Dave Hamilton, and others. They're just great. So I decided to bring home a little video souvenir. So during the evening, I shot clips here, clips there, and one entire song. And then I brought it back and thought, okay, let's make a video. But of course, when you record one song and then clips of other songs, you can't easily edit those together because you get kind of a mishmash of audio. Good video, but a mishmash of audio. So I sort of faked a multicam shoot by using the video from clips during the evening along with one single audio track. And it didn't turn out badly, except in some cases, my continuity gave me a problem. So in one shot, Paul Kent has a sweater on, and then very next shot, he's got a T-shirt on. So obviously, that was at different parts of the evening. Second Macworld, I decided to do something a little different and got ambitious, and we did I got together with a couple friends and we tried a 3-camera shoot. So there's Don McAllister, he was on one camera, Steve Sheridan was on another, and I did the third. Brought that stuff back, put it together. That was using Final Cut Pro version 7, the previous version instead of the current Final Cut 10. Multicam was a bit clunkier. Combining 3 video streams took a little bit more effort, but didn't work out too badly. Year after that, went all out. 6 cameras this time. And that's when I got together with Chuck, and he became the backbone of this thing. 6 cameras, you think, wow, 6 is a lot. Believe it or not, sometimes even with 6 cameras, maybe only one of them has a shot you really like. And that was your camera, Chuck. Chuck was, as I said, the backbone. And he provides the master wide shot that you can always come back to no matter what else is happening with any of the other cameras. Even when something isn't working out, you always come back to Chuck's shot because it's rock solid and it's right in the middle. It's beautiful. So this year we did 5 cameras, same as 6, a little simpler, but we discovered a new camera position this year, which we'll probably talk about a little bit, right behind the drummer. And that gave us a fantastic view out towards the audience and shots here and there of the band from the back.
And Wally, at this point, now that we've covered that, I want to make sure folks understand this is not just about the Cirque du Mac video. It's about what you can do for your company, for your school, for your church, for any video project, that you can take things like a couple iPhones or 5 or 6 iPhones. These are not expensive cameras that we're necessarily using, Wally. We're using whatever we happen to have. Obviously, the better camera gives you a better shot, but still, we weren't running in $20,000 and $30,000 cameras or red cameras or anything like that.
You put your finger on it, Chuck, because if you think back, maybe 10 years, even 5 years, most people did not own a video camera. And the ones who did, they clunked along a little bit. They probably mainly shot stills, a little bit of video, but there weren't many people who were really doing it actively. Now, I'm sure most people have 2, 3, maybe more video cameras. When you count your iPhone, your iPad mini, your point and shoot camera, your SLR camera, and your dedicated camcorder or your pocket camcorder. I haven't counted how many I have in my house, but I'm sure there are about 10 when you include all of those devices. So it's so easy now, as you say, to set up those cameras. One person with an iPhone, another person with an iPad, somebody with a camcorder, someone with a point and shoot camera in different locations. Take those streams, combine them, and really what makes that possible, not just the equipment, simple equipment, but Final Cut Pro 7 is absolutely spectacular and dead easy when you want to make a multicam clip.
Forgive me, I think you meant Final Cut 10.
Did I say Final Cut 7?
You said 7.
It's a lot easier with Final Cut 10, let's put it that way.
Yeah, it is. There's no question.
It was almost a year ago, Final Cut Pro 10 introduced the multicam feature. Before that, it was missing. When Apple went from Final Cut 7 to Final Cut 10, that was one of the features that got dropped. And of course, a lot of people were upset about that because they missed that feature. Well, just over a year ago, it was reintroduced back into Final Cut 10. And it is so sweet. What you do is you sync the audio from the different clips instead of trying other methods to sync your clips together. And in syncing the audio, the algorithm they use is just mind-blowing. It's amazing how the things come together and play just as one clip.
I'm so glad you covered that, because that's the first thing I'm afraid that people will stop and say, okay, yeah, I've got 3, 4, or 5 cameras I can tap, but wow, putting it all together, that just sounds like something that's way beyond me, and so they will never even take a shot at it. And you're right, Final Cut 10, it's built right in, and it makes it so easy for you to start to play with this stuff.
When you import your video into Final Cut 10, it converts it into a format called ProRes 422. When that happens, your video increases in size dramatically. So a lot of people who don't have a big hard drive, who don't have a fast machine, all of a sudden are intimidated because they can't store all that video. Their machine can't process it, especially, say, 5 video streams. And they say, wow, how am I ever going to do this? Another trick you can use is to convert that into proxy format. Proxy files are about a quarter of the resolution of your full ProRes 422. And if you convert them to proxy as well as full resolution, all of a sudden, even machines with less horsepower can play those 5 streams at once, or 3 or 2 streams at once, and you can do multi-clip very easily. Before you finally export it as a final movie, you switch to full resolution and export it as full res. But while you're doing the editing in proxy format, far simpler.
And that process it can be automatic, can it not, Wally? Just set it to create proxy when you're importing the video?
Step number 1, sure. You set it to import the video, you go into Final Cut 10 settings, and there's a setting there for both proxy and high resolution format.
Okay. We dug into sort of the editing, but I want to step back for a second and talk about how you sort of plan the cameras. You mentioned a new camera angle. You talk about my shot being the backbone, which I take as a compliment, but it also just technically, it kind of makes sense that there's one place that you need to go back to in case all the other shots fail, and that would logically be of the entire band on a wide shot so that nothing necessarily has to be going on in one place. I'm going to be catching everything on the stage at any given moment.
This year, I had the luxury of going to the band rehearsal. And when you see that the room where Cirque du Mac takes place, without the people, it's an entirely different room. You understand the dynamics, the audio dynamics and the video dynamics of that room, where the cameras would be placed if you had a choice. And this year I found a special location. Now this is really neat. If you go up the stairs to the mezzanine, down the stairs in the back, you emerge from behind a black curtain, you appear right behind the drummer. And that's something I didn't know you could do. So we had one of the cameras right behind Dave Hamilton, the drummer. Close-ups of the drums, close-ups of the band members from an angle or from behind, shots out into the crowd. So you can see some crowd reaction, people singing along and dancing and knocking balloons around, things like that. That was a really neat shot. Your shot, you are back from the center of the stage, maybe 20, 25 feet. So you can see some of the crowd around you. You can see hands in the air with people taking iPhone pictures and waving and dancing and all this stuff. So you have a sense of what's happening in the audience, which is a great shot. The 3 other cameras are basically right in front of the stage, one to the left, one in the middle, and one on the right-hand side of the stage, right up against the stage. In other words, if we were a little farther back, we would be impeded by possibly people dancing and knocking the camera and getting in the way, which I know sometimes you are, and I think you mentioned. You have friends coming up to you and starting to talk to you in the middle of the performance, and you've kind of got to wave them off. That's a little tough. So with the other 3 cameras we have, we're right up front, right where the action is. In fact, sometimes maybe even a little too close because you can't step back and get that slightly wider shot. You really are, you're in there pretty tight. But with those 5 cameras working at once, you can switch back and forth as the music plays, and you can get the best camera angle at that particular time. And as I've mentioned, occasionally, even with 5 cameras, you'll discover that 4 of the cameras are doing something you don't want them to do. They're either moving, or they're zooming in, or they're changing scene from one band member to another. None of those shots work. That's when the master wide shot that you have, Chuck, comes in so handy because it is the perfect one to go back to.
And again, it sounds easy, but you make a great point that in just by the very nature of trying to do something like this, the folks that are up close to the stage a little more, they're having to deal with people. They're having to deal with the band member they're trying to keep in frame, move off frame or make a sudden movement, and then now you have an empty frame to work with. So that backbone shot or that master shot makes perfect sense. Wally, any advice for folks who are trying to set this up for something that they're going to do at home, other than maybe that master shot, how they approach thinking about where they want to be? Your comment about behind the drummer, it makes me remember that most of us that watch video, until you start to do some production, you don't think about all that. You sort of accept the fact, okay, now, we've gone over to this side. If I'm watching a football game, all of a sudden I'm on the sidelines. Then, I'm up in the stands. Then I'm from the blimp. Then I'm right down the goal line, watching the drive. You don't think about that there's somebody there with a camera that's been there all that time just waiting for the right moment.
That's a good point, Chuck. And in fact, let's talk about the football game for a minute. Because with a football game, they probably have an NFL game typically. I don't know how many cameras. Let's guess 15 cameras. And they're all shooting at the same time. And the key to that whole thing is a guy called the switcher back in the control room. He's got a master console, and he can see, or she can see, the camera output from every one of those people. And they can give a command or just flip a button to switch from one view to another view in real time. And that's what makes it so special when you watch a football game, a hockey game, or even a sitcom on TV, because that's a multi-camera shoot too. People are switching from one view to the next, the next, the next. What I'm doing and what Final Cut 10 lets you do is you can be the switcher, but you don't have to do it in real time. You've got your 5 cameras or your 4 cameras set up. Instead of doing it at the same time as they're recording, you bring the recordings back home, you put them into your editing program, and then you play it back, and you decide at your leisure which view you want to go to and when. That makes it a lot easier. Those switchers at live events, boy, I can imagine that's got to be a really stressful job. I don't know if I could do that. But doing it at home in the comfort of your editing suite or your office is so much easier. So if someone wants to set something like that up, first of all, decide how many cameras you want to use. You can use as many as, in theory, I think you could use 99 different cameras on a multicam shoot. I don't think I'd want to use that. But let's say you have 3 cameras at your disposal, or maybe 4. Once you've shot it, you don't have to use every one of those camera views if you don't want. You can bring it back to 3 if you want to make it simpler. Because whatever you do, you're going to have to watch 3 or 4 or more streams at once on your monitor to decide which one you want. So your eyes have to sort of follow 5 scenes or 4 scenes at the same time. That can be a little tricky. So try not to use too many cameras your first or second time. The master wide shot, as we discussed, I think that's the key to the whole thing. If you set that one up, even with 2 cameras, that one and another camera, you could start small and just cut from one to the other every now and then, and you'll still get a really nice production. I'd say if you could come up with 3 cameras, one on the left, one on the right, and your master wide shot in the middle, you'll have a pretty nice performance. So something like a school play, it could be a church choir, it could be your kid's first rock and roll band in the basement. Could be something as simple as that. I'd set the master wide shot, I'd set that up on a tripod if available. I know you use a monopod, and that's the key to that shot, because you don't want to be jostled. You don't want to have an unsteady shot with trying to do it handheld. The other cameras, your choice. You can either set them up as tripods or handheld. But if you don't have friends to man the other cameras, by all means, set each of them up on a tripod and then start shooting. But I think the most important advice I can give to anybody is just try it. People get a little bit intimidated by the scope of trying to do this all. How am I going to do it? How am I going to think it through? How am I going to produce this performance? Well, the worst that can happen if you set your cameras up and you turn and you press that red button and you hit start and let it go, is you'll come back with that footage and you'll decide you don't want to do it. That's the worst that can happen. The best that can happen is you'll have a lot of fun and you'll discover it's really pretty easy. So just do it. Bring it back, no matter if it doesn't look great, no matter if it's wobbly, give it a shot. You'll be surprised how well it turns out.
And I would add that recognize the first one you do, the second one you do aren't going to be
better.
The second one will be better. The first one's not. You're not going to be happy with because you're just becoming experienced. You're starting to think like a videographer about the camera angles and the shots and what it is you're trying to accomplish. But it is, in fact, really, Wally, you and I are doing a 2-camera shoot right now. It just happens to be that you're at home in your office and I'm at home in my studio, and
Right.
so it's not that big a trick, folks. You see me switch back and forth. I guess really, Wally, the way I do it is we sort of have a 3. We have yours, we have mine, and then I do a split screen so that when we're conversing, they can see us.
Right.
So there you go.
Another interesting thing about the multicam for music videos. Let's say you're shooting a documentary and you're shooting it with multiple cameras, or you're shooting a sitcom, a TV sitcom, something like that. You and I are probably not going to shoot a TV sitcom, but in theory, there's something called a jump cut, where 2 shots look too close together, and when you cut from one to the other, it looks like it all of a sudden jumped from one to the other. That's a distracting kind of thing. So that doesn't work. Also, for those kinds of scenarios, if you combine 2 shots with varying, with angles that are too far apart, so in other words, one of the best editing tips is don't combine 2 shots that are more than 30 degrees apart. So if one shot is here and the other is over here, say 90 degrees, that doesn't look like a natural cut. 30 degrees is a good cut. With music videos, surprisingly, anything goes. People don't care how you cut a music video, whether it's jump cuts or angles that are 180 degrees or whatever it is. They tolerate that in a music video. And I think part of it is the music and the tempo and the pace and the excitement that's happening in the music carries that along. So it doesn't matter what you're seeing. It's the combination of what you're seeing and hearing that makes it work.
Interesting point. I did not know about the 30-degree rule. And
throw out some of those rules, in other words, when you make a music video, and it'll work for you.
And we go back to the football game, the same thing. You're all over the place. You never know where you've been or where you're going to go next. Yeah.
But 30 degrees is kind of a rule of thumb. It's not totally accurate, but try it out. If you're shooting some video, try editing clips that are widely separated. You'll see they don't quite work as well as when you have something that's closer.
The newest version of PDF Pen from Smile is here. PDF Pen 6 can now export to Microsoft Word format and sports a new editing bar for faster access to tools and properties. PDF Pen 6 is also fully optimized for Retina displays, so it looks better than ever. And macOS 10 features autosave and versions are now fully supported. The new PDF Pen Pro 6 includes all that, plus gives users more control over document permission settings that restrict saving, printing, and copying, and simplifies creation of cross-platform interactive PDFs. Find out not only about all these new features, but all the capabilities of PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro at smilesoftware.com. Wally, we're doing a lot of talking about you cut from here, you cut from there. How do you decide, as the guy who's editing this, to make it look as good as you do? How do you decide where to go? Obviously, if the camera's moving or blurry or there's nobody in frame, you don't go to that camera. But if you have a choice, is there any rule or guidelines you use?
I think the music is your best guide. You have to feel the music, and by listening to it, by watching what the band members are doing, you kind of get a sense for, I think I should come out of that shot right now and go into another one. In other words, the singer may pause, for example, or the lead guitarist might be getting ready to play a solo. So just before that happens, you want to cut to the person who's playing, and you hope that one of those cameras was in close on the person who is going to do something next, either the singer or the guitar player or the drummer or the keyboardist or whatever it is. But it's really just getting a feel for it. Another thing that comes into mind is I don't like to leave a shot on the screen for too long. So in making, let's say, a travel video or a documentary video, if your shot doesn't have a lot of really good action to hold your audience, if it's a relatively static shot, I don't really want it on screen for longer than 3 to 4 seconds tops, 4 seconds tops. If it's on for longer than 4, say 5 or 6 seconds, I find audiences begin to anticipate the next picture or the next clip or the next edit. They're waiting for something to happen, and it kind of stalls their engagement in the video. So if you can get in, show that video, get on to the next one before 4 seconds, you're doing well. Now with music, yes, you do have stuff going on. You have action, you have sound, you have people in the audience. It's all exciting. So you can stay longer than 4 if you want to, but generally if you leave a shot on too long, and again, you feel that after a while when you've edited enough video, you kind of know when you want to get out of that shot and move to the next one. So combination of those two things, listening and feeling the music, and secondly, just getting out of shots before they're on too long and they bore your audience.
Since we are talking about the music video, but really in anything that maybe has a sound bed under it, do you struggle to try to hit the beat of the music, or does that not really bother you if you can't hit the beat?
No, the beat is important. Particularly, I mentioned other kinds of videos, whether they're documentary or travel videos with the music. Another example is the videos I did on the show floor at Macworld this year. In those cases, the beat is absolutely critical. That builds up kind of a momentum in your audience, and it keeps your clips short. Things change when the beat changes, and your audience gets swept away in that, and that builds the excitement. It's much more interesting to look at than something that doesn't cut to the beat. But in the multicam music videos, really, when I said you feel the music and you sense the music and you know when to change, that's another way of saying change when the music changes. So that is syncing to the beat.
Okay, point taken. For the cuts, I noticed that you tend to like a lens flare transition. Much of the time.
Yes.
Is there any reason that you don't do a little more of a hard cut from just one to the other without any transition?
It's interesting you notice that, Chuck. Good point. Good point. I'm a little nervous about anything like a lens flare that you can do too often, because you get tired of it and you wonder why it's there all the time. The straight cut is always good if you can do it. But sometimes, especially when you're cutting from one shot to another and the angle is severe, a straight cut can look awkward. When you're going from a wide shot to a close-up shot and changing angle at the same time, again, that edit can look really awful depending on the shot you're going from and to. Same thing, if you're taking the camera angle from behind the drummer and your next shot is a shot from your camera, for example, looking at the entire band from a medium shot, again, a straight cut looks not very polished. The other thing you notice, in that room, there's a lot of lights flashing and a lot of things going on. Especially last year when they had a laser light show, well, the lights were everywhere. And some of those cuts, when you cut from the middle of a laser flash into the next shot, and it doesn't have a laser flash because it's from a different angle, again, those straight cuts look a little bit unpolished. So I put that lens flare as a way of softening that transition. I tried it last year with the laser light show, and I found that made a huge difference because everything looked completely natural. This year, as you recall, we did not have that laser light show at Cirque du Mac. A little bit different feel out there. Nonetheless, I used that to soften some of those transitions. I used a lot of different, I tried out, I should say, a lot of different transitions in Final Cut 10. I tried cross dissolves, I tried this, I tried that. I found that the lens flare probably was the least intrusive and the one that made those awkward transitions feel the most natural. There are a lot of straight cuts too, and I use those when the cuts were very nice.
And they look very obvious. And of course, what we're not seeing, we see the lens flare. We don't see what the lens flare was
covering, hiding.
I was trying not to say hiding, Wally, but
no,
yeah. So you're right. We don't get to see that. So that's why I kind of asked the question: is why you decided to mix the two.
Another reason, for example, particularly with multicam, I mentioned that sometimes the four cameras are all moving or changing locations or doing something, and the place where you really want to make your edit is maybe about 5 frames off, for example, because the shot is a little out of focus, and 5 frames later it's perfectly in focus. Well, I don't want to move my edit because then it will happen in the wrong time of the music. It'll miss the beat. And I want to leave my edit where it is, but I don't want that 5 frames of out of focus. If I put that transition in, it blends the two together very nicely and it hides it. So, method to the madness.
That's why we're here, is trying to learn what the method to the madness is.
Right.
Wally, okay, so we focus now on video a lot. Let's talk about the audio side of this, because I'm sitting out there with that main stage shot. I've got a mic on the camera that is picking that up, and what I get is a typical audience mic kind of shot. Not bad, you know what's going on, but certainly doesn't do justice to the music. What you end up producing is gorgeous, and makes me wish that we had shot the whole thing and I had the whole audio track in that.
I had to choose. First of all, I had 6 audio tracks that I could work with. There was the audio track from each of the 5 cameras. And in addition to that, this year we tapped into the house audio board, and I came back with a matrix mix from the house audio board, which basically is the voice and the instruments. Now, you would think getting the sound from the house audio board would be spectacular. In fact, it isn't. It's almost too clean. It's very nice, but it's ultra clean. You don't have any sense of the room. You don't hear any of the audience reaction or some of the asides that different band members are doing. It's just pristine, clean audio. On the other hand, the cameras come back with something different. I found of the 5 cameras, the worst one was Steve's. Steve was the camera behind the drummer. You can imagine, he's pretty close to that drum, so all you hear is Dave Hamilton pounding on the drums and the cymbals. So that one isn't very good. It's useful because I need all of those audio tracks to sync the video tracks together. That's what Final Cut 10 uses, to sync those tracks together into one. Okay? The audio. The second one, the one on the left and the one on the right, they're getting audio that's more balanced to one side or the other. They're not getting the full left-right separation. They're getting one side or the other. Your camera and my camera, they were both in the center of the action. Yours was 20 feet farther back. Mine was right up against the stage in the front. Those were the two best audio tracks I found. Yours had a bit more crowd noise in it, and actually I switched to your audio track depending on what we were seeing on screen. I had a lot of shots that I call them B-roll shots. They're audience reaction shots, people dancing, some of the performers at Cirque du Mac doing their thing with the light show and the roller skates and things like that. Every now and then I cut to one of those, and I went to your audio because it had some of the crowd noise in it. It really worked well. Otherwise, most of the time I used the audio from my camera. And I mixed together the audio track from the camera with the house matrix mix. So it's a matter of levels. You find the right levels between the two so you can sweeten the vocal and the music from the camera audio track with the house matrix mix. The camera track is important to give you the fullness of the room. The house matrix mix gives some nice definition and some nice edges to both the music and the voice. And the two of them together, yeah, sometimes it's a difficult juggling act, but if you're lucky, you come up with something that sounds really quite good.
And these definitely do. These definitely do. So we've got video, we've got audio, we've discussed editing, we've discussed camera placement, the whole bit. So now we've got it all assembled in Final Cut.
Right.
We export it out as this gorgeous movie, and we get something, I guess, for the 2 to 3 minute video. What do you get? 5-7 gigs?
Yeah, for about a 4-minute video, typically about 5 gigs. So a master file, if you export it, if you export the master from Final Cut 10, you will get a ProRes 422 file. It's big. 5 gigs. And that's not something you want to post on SmugMug or YouTube or anywhere else, especially when you do 9 music videos, as we did this year. So that's about 45 gigs worth of stuff. It's imposing. So yeah, you've got to squash it down to a reasonable size so it'll stream nicely on YouTube, for example. And what I use for that is I use a program called MPEG Stream Clip. It's one of these Mac gems. If you're a videographer, it does everything. It is absolutely wonderful. It converts formats. It compresses things. It's just a great program. Now, we could have used Apple's compressor that comes with the Final Cut 10 suite. Also does a very good job. I find the settings you can tweak a little more finely in MPEG Stream Clip. Does a very nice job. So typically for YouTube, I would take that 5 gig video master file and I would get it down to somewhere between 250 and 300 megs. It's still 1080p, but it's compressed to the point where you can upload it comfortably and not break your bandwidth limits, and it'll stream very nicely from YouTube down.
Wally, I use MPEG Stream Clip too, and this is one place I want to be very careful with our audience and not lose them, because when you open MPEG Stream Clip, your brain can explode because there's so many options, there's so many things, and you don't know what they are. So how do you go about learning a little bit about MPEG Stream Clip, or do you have a cheat sheet somewhere that you can share or point us to help us decide what we need to be doing with that program to get the best video out?
Well, in my case, what I did was I went to YouTube. Occasionally for YouTube, I've uploaded files that I've created for, let's say, Apple TV. So they're M4V files. They play beautifully on your Mac and on an Apple TV. But when you upload them to YouTube, you get this funny little message that says, oh, we're not really sure about this format, and it may not play properly. You may want to think carefully about what you upload in future, or something like that. So I said, okay, well, what do you actually want? And if you go on the YouTube site, there's a page that tells you what format and what settings work the best for YouTube. Now, these are derived partly from the Windows world, but they apply to Mac also. So I took those settings and said, okay, here's what they want. Let's see if I can duplicate that in my setup. So I won't use compressor anymore, the Apple compressor program. I'll go to MPEG Stream Clip and see if I can set up the same settings. At the same time, I went to SmugMug and did the same thing. And I had a look at what settings they recommended for quality versus size versus ability to stream properly. And I got those numbers. And I compared the two, and there were a lot of similarities. And then I just set that up in MPEG Stream Clip. In other words, I didn't have to think it through. I just duplicated the settings that were there, and I tried out a couple of them. And I exported files, let's say, with 2 or 3 different options. Then I had a look at the quality and a look at the size, and I picked the one that seemed to work the best. But if you just stick with the ones that YouTube recommends or SmugMug recommends, both of them have pages where they spell them all out for you. Duplicate them, will work out fine. So, for example, in this case, they wanted H.264 as the compression. Okay, that's pretty easy. I did it at, the next row over is quality setting. I did it at 100% quality in MPEG Stream Clip. An important one is the data rate. I limited my data rate to 8 megabits per second. And when you change that setting on MPEG Stream Clip, it'll tell you right away what size you're going to get out of your final video. So it'll go from 5 gigs down to 300 megs right away, and you'll know you're on the right track when you do that. There are sound settings, MPEG-4, AAC, 128 kilobits per second is what YouTube recommends. The size, if it's 720p or 1080p, you just select the resolution that you shot your video in. In our case, at Cirque du Mac, one of the cameras was a 1080i camera, so I had to de-interlace. Otherwise, I was getting some interlacing artifacts. So that's another thing to look at. MPEG Stream Clip gives you a choice whether to de-interlace or not, and if it's interlaced video, you just tick that box and away you go. That's about it. There's one other box that says something like fast starts, which means when you access that video on YouTube, it'll begin to play as soon as it buffers enough video to start. That's about it. It's pretty simple. Just mimic what YouTube tells you, and works out okay.
I have to ask one question just for me personally. Have you played with X.264 at all, or do you just prefer sticking with the standard H.264?
I haven't played with that much, Chuck. Okay. I'd be interested in your experiences, though.
My experiences have been that it delivers. I've not played with the data rate as much probably as I should, but X.264 seemed to give me a smaller picture without really losing any quality. In fact, in some cases, I think it was better, but I'm shooting something a lot different than what you are, and have a lot different source material. So it is a bit of a black art that you just have to experiment and find out what works best for you, depending on how you're going to deliver it, where you're going to view it, or where you intend to view it.
In fact, what I finally did, when I found the settings that I like the best, I just took a screen grab of the MPEG Stream Clip stream before I exported it, and I saved it in the folder where I store my YouTube videos. So next time I do it, I just open that in preview and have a look at the settings and remind myself, and away I go.
That's a great tip. That's something that we don't do often enough.
Screen grabs are wonderful.
Yeah.
I use a program called Sharpshooter, which is actually quite nice because you hit Command-Shift-4, you take your screen grab, but before it saves it to your desktop or wherever you want, normally Apple will save it with a date stamp showing when you made it, but Sharpshooter lets you rename that screen grab. So before you save it, you just rename it as YouTube de-interlace settings or something like that. You hit the return button and it'll pop it down wherever you want as a saved file. Really neat.
So we've done a lot of talking Now we have these wonderful videos. Wally, where can the folks go and see them, since I know you've loaded them at least one or two places?
Well, I've made a playlist on YouTube. They're all there. There are 9 videos this year. Believe me, 9 videos was a bit more work than last year. I think we did 3 last year, and 9 was a bit more. I think the band, their entire set, well, there were 2 sets. The total number of songs they did this year, I think, was about 28 or something like that. And we picked 9 of them that we thought had the best balance of familiarity. These are songs that most people are familiar with. Ones where the band seemed to really be in sync with each other, and each of the band members had a different solo, and so that kind of worked out. And just ones that had a lot of audience participation and seemed to have a lot of fun in them. So those 9 are kind of a walk through Cirque du Mac from the first song to the finale, where they take a bow and they get that well-deserved applause from the people there. So all 9 are there. It's one of those things, and I'm sure I feel the same way, you feel the same way I do, Chuck. So many people work so hard at Macworld to make that party happen. The Macworld All-Star Band, the people in the Broadway Studios Club where it takes place, the guy in the soundboard, all of the sponsors who give so generously to make that happen, plus the people who come and participate and just make that a great party. It's one of those cases where you want to give something back to the community. So this is my way of giving back by recapturing some of the excitement of that evening and sharing it either with people who weren't there, who get a chance to see how it happened, or with people who were there, who get to relive it a second time.
Yeah, and that's why I started doing mine. I was greedy. I wanted to go back and in the middle of the summer re-experience that and just remember how good a time, because it's a terrific band from the fun perspective, from and because they're all friends, that makes a big difference as well. So but your videos far outshine mine. Folks, I'll have links in the show notes. You got to go and see these whether you were there or not. Even if you're not interested in the band or the music, just from the production standpoint that we've talked about, this has been sort of a nice little case study.
Chuck, I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
Uh-oh.
Are you in for next year?
Oh, without a doubt.
It's a date.
All right. Okay. Well, we've got 2 now. No.
I think we've probably got about 2 or 3 other captive subjects who are returnees. So I'm looking forward to the next one. We'll think about some new wrinkles for next year. I don't know what they'll be, but let's try to make it as exciting as this year.
Sounds good, but I'm going to put you on the spot, and you may not want to commit, but let's do the whole show. Let's just not do songs.
I would love to do the whole show, except I'm the guy who knows how much work it took to do 9 videos this year. So I've extrapolated and said, now if I do 28 videos next year, how will that turn out?
We'll see.
Actually, it might not be as difficult as that, because you could do the whole show, except you just let some of the shots run a little longer.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting thing to try. And I think what makes or breaks that is whether all 5 or 4 or however many cameras there are with us, whether they have the interest and the staying power to stick with it for the entire set. As you know, it can get a little tiring. In your case, it's probably a little easier because you're on a monopod and you're set up, and you don't have to do a lot of moving. But with the cameras in the different locations, you always have to be on your toes to find where the action is and move from one shot to the next, to anticipate what might happen next, to cover when something that you don't want happening is happening. Like this year, for example, we had a couple of very rude people get up on the stage and decide to be exhibitionists, and that's the last thing I want to show in a video is people who shouldn't be there. So I had a little work to do editing them out of the show. So challenge will be, if someone watches those, if you can see where that happened, you've got pretty sharp eyes.
Exactly.
Anyway, I'm up for it, Chuck. Let's see what we can do. Let's recruit some some other videographers, and we'll have a lot of fun again.
Wally, that sounds great. Where should we tell people to find out more about what you do? Do you have a web presence that you prefer to point them to, or your Twitter account, or what?
I'll send you some information, Chuck. I'll link to it. My Twitter handle is WA11_Y, so it sort of looks like Wally, except with ones instead of L's. It's WA11_Y, and my YouTube site is WSKI55. But again, I'll send you those references, Chuck, and you can put them in the show notes, and people can go and explore and have some fun.
Perfect. Well, one last thing I did want to ask. Since we talked about prior years, are all the years' videos on your YouTube channel?
Yes, they are. Both the Macworld show floor videos, the ones I did this year, 2012, the year before, and the year before. All of the Cirque du Mac stuff is there, including my very first one, my single-handed multi-camera shoot, which is kind of fun to watch now. The Cirque du Mac 2013 is in one playlist. The others are in a separate playlist, but it's easy to find them.
Okay. I ask that because I think it would be good in light of this conversation for folks to go back, look at just your evolution, even with your skill set to start with. Look at how it's evolved and changed and what you've been able to do with it.
Mentioning Macworld and the videos, I also have interesting experiences with the show floor videos. And my challenge every year is finding music to go with the show floor video. And it isn't always easy. And this year I had an interesting experience because we had been in Australia just before Macworld, a couple of months before. And I experienced an Aboriginal band in Australia that was absolutely fantastic. They played didgeridoos. They made animal sounds. I know that sounds a little funky, but it's addictive and it's wonderful music. And after I came back from Macworld with the shots from the show floor, I said to myself, that music would go so well with this video. So I wrote them and asked permission to use a couple of their songs, and they were happy to oblige. So the Macworld videos this year are accompanied by Aboriginal didgeridoo Australian music. Amazing how well it works. So check those out while you're there.
Yeah, that's a nice tease. And it does. It works very well.
Yeah.
Wally, thank you so much for the time. This has really been a fascinating look, not just at the Cirque du Mac videos, but also the mind of a videographer and how you do some of these shots. And folks, I'm with Wally. Go out and try it. You will find some challenges, but you will have a lot of fun. You will get better at it. And even your first one will be something you'll be proud of, I promise.
Chuck, it's been a pleasure. A lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, we'll do it again, Wally. Thanks so much.
All right, next time.
Folks, check out the show notes. As Wally said, we'll have everything we talked about in there, links to all of Wally's stuff, the videos, the whole shoot and match. Until the next time, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including MacVoices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the MacVoices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.